Welcome to this explainer. You know, it's so easy to look at a 1611 King James version of the Bible and just see, well, a dusty historical relic, right? An antique book sitting on a shelf that we only really prize for its poetic Shakespearean language. But today, we're flipping the script. We're looking at this text through an entirely different lens. We're going to explore how practitioners actually use the 1611 KJV not as a museum piece, but as a razor-sharp black and white field manual for daily living. Because when you apply it directly to modern life, that hyper-literal 17th century grammar actually transforms spiritual concepts into incredibly focused, actionable steps.
All right, let's jump right in. On the agenda for today, we'll cover the 400-year language gap, the momentum of the F suffix, the crucial difference between thou and ye, the weight of formal commands, and then we'll wrap it all up with a daily reading filter you can use right away.
Starting off with Section 1, the 400-year language gap.
So because the English language has evolved so much over the last 4 centuries, we really have to watch out for what linguists call false friends before we can unlock this text benefits. The KJV is absolutely full of these. Take the word prevent. We use this literally all the time today, but in a 17th century context, this false friend can easily trick a modern reader into totally misunderstanding a verse.
Think about it. In modern English, prevent means to stop or hinder something from happening. But if you read that modern definition into the 1611 text, you're going to hit a brick wall. Why? Because back then, prevent actually meant to go before or to precede. Literally the exact opposite meaning. Wild, right?
So how do we actually bridge this gap? Well, successful students of the Word usually tackle this with a dual reading approach. Practitioners will often read the KJV or New King James side by side with a modern word-for-word translation like the ESV or NASB. It's a brilliant strategy, honestly. It lets you catch that modern textual clarity while still locking on to the raw, precise 17th century grammar. Once you look past the archaic vocabulary, you really start to notice these raw, active verbs and exact relationship markers that this specific text perfectly preserves.
Moving right along to Section 2, the momentum of F.
Okay, so the strict grammar of this text actually forces a massive shift away from passive reading. Take this incredibly famous verse, Galatians 5:16, "Walk in the Spirit, and ye shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh." In modern English, a command like walk sounds, well, almost like a static fact. It sounds like a single event, or maybe just a box you check once on Sunday morning and then kind of forget about for the rest of the week.
But here's the game changer. The 1611 KJV uses these active suffixes, rendering words like walketh. And listen, this isn't just Shakespearean flair. It is a vital grammatical marker. The F suffix specifically denotes continuous, uninterrupted habitual action. When you translate this into your daily life, it entirely shifts your mindset. You stop thinking about moments of spirituality, and you start focusing on a lifestyle of momentum.
This completely transforms your daily practice. Walking in the Spirit becomes a step-by-step, continuous movement. Let's say you're walking in the Spirit at 8:59 a.m., but you stumble and fail at 9 a.m. Well, that continuous eth grammar means you immediately take the next step in the Spirit at 9:01 a.m. It demands an ongoing relationship, not a perfect, unbroken record.
All right, diving into Section 3, thou versus ye.
Honestly, modern English kind of did us a disservice by blending everything into a generic you, or maybe y'all, depending on what part of the country you're in. But the KJV explicitly separates the singular, thou and thee, from the plural, ye and you. When you're applying these texts to modern life, paying attention to these pronouns instantly clarifies whether a verse is talking about your individual, private devotion or your duty to the wider community of believers.
Let's look at an example. In Matthew 6:6, Jesus gives instructions on private spiritual disciplines. Notice the exact word choice here. But thou, when thou prayest, enter into thy closet. Because it uses the singular thou, the KJV is locking this command strictly to you alone.
In daily practice, this is a laser-focused, direct command to your individual soul. There is absolutely no room for corporate hiding here. You can't just piggyback on the prayers of your congregation or your family. The text demands that you find a literal or metaphorical closet today and carve out time in your personal schedule.
But now, let's contrast that with Ephesians 6:11. Put on the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. Do you notice the shift? The text doesn't say that thou may be able to stand. It uses the plural, ye. When the Bible talks about spiritual warfare or bearing fruit, the KJV is actively reminding us of our context.
The daily application here is profound.
In modern English, we read, "put on the armor," and we immediately picture ourselves as these lone gladiators, independently fighting spiritual battles in our bedrooms. But because of that plural, ye, the text clarifies that the armor is given to the camp, not just the lone soldier. Spiritual defense is a community effort. You simply cannot successfully fight spiritual battles if you're disconnected from a local body of believers.
Which brings us to Section 4, the weight of formal commands.
Modern translations sometimes use this soft, conversational psychology to describe spiritual growth. You might see phrases like, try to be kind, or set your minds, but the 1611 text, it doesn't do that. Take Romans 8:13, for example. For if ye live after the flesh, ye shall die. But if ye through the Spirit do mortify the deeds of the body, ye shall live. This is stark, demanding, formal language that cuts straight to the human will.
When an old habit, a flash of anger, or an anxious thought flares up today, modern conversational psychology might tell us to manage it or, simply breathe through it. Even modern Bible translations might just say put to death. But the KJV uses the word mortify, which is a highly specific demand for immediate, uncompromising action.
In daily practice, to mortify means bringing a serious, almost surgical intensity to your daily boundaries. It means treating a bad habit or a toxic trait like a malignant growth that must be immediately cut out by the power of the Spirit. It's a level of aggressive action that goes way beyond simply tolerating or managing our flaws.
And finally, Section 5, your daily reading filter.
Okay, here is the exact mental tool you can use every single day. Whenever you hit a difficult sentence in the KJV, just run it through this quick two-step filter. Step 1, isolate the grammar. Ask yourself, is the text using a singular thou speaking directly to me, or a plural ye speaking to my community? Step 2, convert the verbs. Look closely at the action words. Do they end in eth? If they do, you immediately know this isn't a one-time event. It's an ongoing, continuous habit required for today.
By leaning into these strict grammatical rules, everything changes. The text totally ceases to be a dusty historical relic. Instead, it becomes exactly what we talked about at the very beginning, an incredibly sharp, black and white field manual for your daily walk. The strict language becomes the very thing that makes it so wildly practical and so immediate. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final thought to chew on. How will reading the precise black and white grammar of the 1611 text change your daily walk today? Are you going to look at those eth verbs and keep stepping forward? Will you recognize a thou and take absolute personal accountability in the secret place? The tools are right there in the text, just waiting for you to pick them up and use them.